Good morning, everyone. We are very happy to have Sónia Liléo with us today. She's the head of asset management from Fusion, and she has over 15 years of experience in the wind industry, working across both project development and assets operation. And she's mainly strong focus on improving performance and the value of the green assets. So today we will have a podcast with Sónia where she shares with us the insight about asset management trends in wind power, which is a very hot topic because our industry is growing. And Sónia, thank you for being here today with us.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's have our very first question about your daily tasks as a asset manager for green power plant or green industry projects.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you a lot for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here, part of this podcast, and also being a guest lecturer in one of your courses. I really admire this wind power project management program. It's very important for the wind industry as I see it. In Sweden, one of the few educational programs in Europe, and I think it's very valuable and also very important that the industry contributes to this program. So thank you for inviting me. As you said, I've been working in wind industry for 15 years, but I started as wind energy analyst, so looking at data and modeling the position of the wind turbines. And then with time, I moved into the analysis of the assets in operation, because it's very interesting once you have done the development of a project and then the optimization of a layout and the choice of the turbine model, then it's very, very interesting to see what happens afterwards when the asset is in operation. So I will say that an asset management is multidisciplinary. You mix different areas of knowledge and expertise. And I will say that one of them is you need to have some at least basic knowledge on the technology. You will have your experts helping you, but it's very good that you have a good knowledge of the technology. And then, of course, you have a long list of contracts that you need to be aware of. So it's also very good that you have some knowledge on contract management, understanding what is important to negotiate when you need to renegotiate some agreement. So that is also part of the daily work, that you need to be aware of what are the contracts that are important for this asset, how should I manage them. So technology, contract management, and then you have, of course, the safety and security, environmental and quality aspect that is also very important. So safety should always come first. It's no tolerance in terms of accidents in an asset, so it's very important that the mechanism needed for it are in place. And then, of course, you have also the finance aspect, right? So a wind asset is part of an investment, and you need to get the return of the investment that you are expecting to. So you need to be aware of what investment was made, what are the main KPIs that you need to follow to understand how the investment is performing. So I would say this is normally what an asset manager does, looking at both the technical perspective, contractual, then you have the health and safety, and you have the finance part.
So it leads me to another question of how the asset management strategy will be different between the early stage of the wind farms and the mature portfolios?
Yeah, exactly. So from all these aspects, it will differ if you have an early stage wind farm that has just been commissioned, or if the wind farm has been in operation for many years. If we take, for example, the relation with the landowners, that relation is, of course, highly important. You need to know the landowners need to know the owner of the asset. And this is as important in day one as in year 25. You need to have a good relation and know each other. But then there are other aspects. So of course the technical part of the assets will age. So the turbines will age, the components, the electrical network, even the IT network. So you need to take certain decisions at different stages of the wind farm. So I will say that what differs the most is the operation and the maintenance of the asset. That will be different if it is year 20, year 15, or year 1.
Yeah, as you mentioned, two of the very important stakeholders here, like the landowner. I also remember you mentioned in the lecture where we should know who they are and how we shape our relationship with them, because they are very close to it. We are staying in their land.
Absolutely.
And another stakeholder is the service provider.
Exactly.
So can you talk more about the strategy, how to maintain and establish a good relationship with the service provider?
Yeah, and that's absolutely very important. I believe I also mentioned it in the lecture that an asset manager is also a lot about knowing how to deal with different people. You need to understand the interest of these different groups of stakeholders, and also need to understand how you shall communicate with them. So if we take the service providers, there is very important that there is a clear alignment between the interests of the asset owner and the interests of the service providers, right? So that they know what is the scope of work of this contract, why is important for them to fulfill what has been agreed, and why is it important for us to also follow up the work that is being done. So I will say that most important is, of course, always to trust that the service providers are doing their very best. And if this is not the case, if we see that the performance is not really reaching the level that we are expecting, to try to understand why isn't it so? Is there something that I as asset owner can improve to allow them to do a better work? So I believe this of trust and also having a collaborative approach. We need to understand that we will reach the goals by working together, not by taking the contract and saying, but we have agreed this and this, you are not fulfilling, but trying to understand what are the problems and can we collaborate to make it happen. So trust and collaboration and having clear goals that are aligned and also incentives, I think that's very important.
Yeah. So let's go a bit more to the more intense side where you have conflict of interest between the different stakeholders. How do you manage these conflicts?
Exactly. So that's a very important question. And there will absolutely be conflicts at some point and different level of conflicts. So the contracts, I would say the contracts are really the foundation, is what is the basis of the relation with the stakeholders, right? So you always go back to the contract. What says the contract? What are the terms and conditions? But it happens quite many times that the contracts are not 100% clear. We can interpret some terms in two different ways. And then, of course, it's a matter of sitting around the table and again, this of what are your interests as provider, what are my interests as asset owner. If they are aligned, then it will be easier to find a solution to solve the problem. If they are not aligned, then sometimes it will be more positive for asset owner and other times it will be more negative. So having a good contract is very important for all the lifetime of the asset and all the different disputes that will arise.
Yeah, like as someone with a legal background, and so I completely agree with you.
Okay.
When you can interpret the contract term is a very different way from our intention from the beginning. Or even if you have the same intention from the beginning, you can completely change your mind and interpret it in a very different way eventually. So, but going to a let's say the control asset managers using the contract structure to shape the level of control. So can you share more about that?
Yeah, and this is a very interesting question because one thing is that we do the contracts 20, 25 years ago. So it's a contract, if it is a long-term contract, of course, not all. And now I'm speaking about service supply. These contracts can be long-term. And then you are doing a contract that will shape the strategy, the 1M strategy for 20, 25 years or even longer. Then, of course, you can also have shorter term agreements, 5 years, and then renew or get another providers. So that's, of course, also possible. But something that is a challenge is that you don't really know what will be the main topics that will be challenging in 5 years and 10 years. So it's difficult to shape the contract so that it will also cover questions that you don't know that it will be questions, relevant questions in the future. For example, if we take this aspect of the ancillary services, so the fact that we can use a wind farm also to provide grid flexibility services. This was not really known or was not a topic for 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So this is normally not included in a service supply agreement that was signed 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So how to deal with it now when we want to qualify the assets to provide this kind of services is not covered by the agreement? Are we still allowed to do it, and to which extent? So this, in this example, for example, it does not allow us, we don't have control over the wind farm. We cannot do whatever we want. So we also need to have in mind that we have an agreement that is limiting the control for certain reasons that are understandable. But it's something to think about also in the future when we are shaping the new contracts, trying to have in mind that there will be topics that we are not aware about today that will be of interest in the future.
Yeah, and during the lectures, you also mentioned about the access ownership strategies, which is really interesting. Can you share a bit more about it for our audience?
Yes, of course. So I mentioned that there are 3 main asset ownership structures. So there is the first level where the asset owner is quite, I will not say laid back, but more relies on the subcontractors to do both the asset management and also the operation and maintenance of the wind farm. So it is subcontracted. You invested the money and then you have an agreement and someone will manage your asset, and also a provider will do the operation and maintenance of your asset. Then there is the next level where the asset owner takes a bit more responsibility and does the asset management in-house, but outsources the operation and maintenance of the wind farms, right? And then there is the last level where the asset owner is doing both asset management and also the operation and maintenance of the assets. So they have their own technicians that are being sent to the site that are doing the maintenance of the turbines and even of the grid and the civil works. So it depends on where you are, in which phase of development your company is, and also what type of company you are. If you are an investor and you rely on others to take care of your investments, or you are an owner and you want to have full control of the assets, then you also need to have your own knowledge about asset management and about operation and maintenance. Yeah, so different involvement levels, I would say. Right.
I understand that at Fusion you're currently at the second
Exactly,
one,
at the second level. Exactly. So we do asset management in-house together with also technical and commercial management providers, but we are an active owner, so we are following up all the contracts. We don't have our own technicians. But I, together with my colleagues, we are then managing the assets together with also providers, subcontractors that are managing the technical daily management of the assets and also the commercial daily management of assets. And this is because Fusion is still a small company. We are focusing on developing the strategy of the company, focusing on our core areas, but not on these expertise areas. Then we are making use, so to say, of the knowledge of our external providers.
Yeah. So from your point of view as an asset manager, what are the biggest risks in green assets portfolios today?
Yeah, the biggest risks, of course, I need to mention the volatility in the electricity prices. That's, of course, very difficult to forecast, and it has major impact in the performance of the assets. So I would say that's absolutely the biggest challenge. How will the prices develop? and how to manage when the prices are low. But also, as we mentioned today in the course, we need to look at not only having a wind asset, but a wind farm, but having an energy farm. So it's not only about wind, but combining wind with, for example, solar and battery energy storage system. So having an energy farm or an hybrid farm, and there you will have revenue streams from different sources, and in that way make your investment more solid.
Yeah, talking about like energy project instead of like green power projects. We also see a trend that storage and hybrid projects like green and solar and battery become more and more common. So how does the asset management need to adapt with this trend?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so I will say that nowadays we don't speak about developing wind farms, but developing energy farms. And in that way, you also need to already think about what kind of asset management strategy will we have for our energy farm, not only wind farm, but for the energy farm, where you will have the wind asset, let's say it's solar asset, and a battery, how to operate the system. And also, it needs to have a very smart control, because the main added value will come from combining these three assets in the smartest way, right? And this will require a control system that is very intelligent, I would say, and we have the knowledge to develop this kind of systems to do it. But answering to your question, I will say that we will need to have a hybrid asset management strategy in the same way. So trying to understand how to get added value from operating three assets co-located instead of only one asset.
Yes, I agree with you completely. When we have to have a good strategy to integrate and develop our energy farm, not the green farm. So one final question before we're going to the more overarching level is that what are the KPIs that you use to track and monitor the assets and make decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I will say that we have some hard KPIs and soft KPIs, and both of them are as important. The soft KPIs are KPIs that are a bit more difficult to measure. They are not that measurable, and it's about then again the relations. So you have the landowners, you have all the service providers, you have the authorities, and you have the neighbors that are not landowners, but the community. So the relation with all these stakeholders is very important, and you need to follow it up, the development of this relation in some way. It's not a measurable way, but you need to follow it up, to get some feedback and try to improve. So this, I will say, is more the soft KPIs. And then you have the hard KPIs that you can measure. And of course, the income of your asset, the revenues of your asset. And then you also have availability is has been a very common parameter that gives a very good idea of how well your asset is performing. But now we need to have in mind that availability is production-based availability, while now it's very important to look at income-based availability. So trying to understand, is the asset available when the prices are high? So not only when the wind speed is high, but is the asset available when you can get most value out of it? So that's a very important KPI, I would say. And then, of course, the OPEX, so how much it costs to operate your asset. Among others, there are many others, but of course, the return of your investment, and then looking at the technical part, you have this income-based availability. And then you have the safety KPIs, again, zero tolerance for incidents, for accidents. And then also you have these soft values measuring the relationship with the main stakeholders.
Yes, so it leads me to another question with your more than 20-year experience and observations. So which KPI are actually the most predictive of potential failures?
Exactly. So if we think about failures, component failure, which KPI is kind of the key KPI, the key parameter that indicates that a failure will happen. I will say that in this part, in this respect, we go to the amazing sensors that we have all over a wind turbine, or at least in the main components that is connected to this kind of condition monitoring system. So these parameters that are measuring the vibration of the main components, these are very important to predict failure. So if we look at these data from these sensors and try to detect anomalies in the behavior of the data, then I believe this will be an important KPI to predict failure.
Yeah. Right, and I also see a chance in using AI, especially the digital twins, where you fit the digital twin with the data of the sensor, so that you can simulate.
Absolutely, exactly. Yeah. So digitalization, it has happened a lot during the last time related to digitalization. How can we extract most value out of the data? And a wind farm is an amazing ocean of data, right? You have many sensors measuring different parameters. So how do you really get value out of that data? But it has happened a lot, and I really believe that we can get added value if we really use the data in a smart way. But then it's very important to understand, so what brings most value to the asset. So this part that we are not only looking for best performance at high wind speeds, but we are looking at best performance when the prices are highest, when we get most income out of the sales of electricity.
All right, so let's go a bit more to the more macro level, where we dig deeper to the regulatory framework. So how do you, changing the regulatory framework and market volatility influence the long-term asset management strategy for the wind portfolios?
Yeah. So speaking about regulatory framework, so I will say that at the moment we are working mainly with two aspects. So it's changes in the regulation that control the electricity market, and then also changes in the regulation or improvements that is related to security, to cybersecurity. So it's two very important regulations, in this case at European level, that are reflected at Swedish level. So if you look at the trading market, the energy markets, so there have been a number of changes during the last 2 years in terms of how we model the flow of electricity in the Nordics, so that's called Nordic flow-based model, and also the market time unit that we went from 1 hour trading, both intraday trading and day-ahead trading, we changed to 15 minutes. So these changes were done at European level, and Nord Pool, so the Nordic market, is part of the European energy market. And of course, these changes, they had strong impact in the electricity prices in the Nordics. Some of them were predicted, were expected, but some of them were totally unexpected. And this had quite high impact. I believe now that we have a better understanding of what is happening, the situation is a bit more stable. But I will say that we still keep a very active follow-up on what is happening in the markets. So, and in terms of the cybersecurity regulation, this is something that we need to be aware of and we need to conform with. So we are doing a lot of work in this respect to fulfill the requirements in terms of cybersecurity.
Yeah, I also remember that when we first switched from 1 hour to 15 minutes in the intraday markets, there's times that is up to 10,000 euro for 1 megawatt hours, which is crazy.
Absolutely, yes. So that's what you mentioned were some events that were when this change was introduced from 1 hour to 15 minutes intraday market. So the imbalance prices went up to 10,000 euros per megawatt hour in one 15 minutes interval. So absolutely, as you say, unreasonable prices. Yeah, and this was totally unexpected. I believe no one was really thinking that this could happen, but it happened, and I believe now we understand a bit better why it happened, how we can deal with it. But anyway, it's still a risk that we need to be aware of. Yeah.
So, like, due to the change, do you see that the asset managers becoming more integrated with trading and market operation teams, especially with increasing the price volatility?
Yes, yes. So an asset manager needs to have a good understanding of how trading, what are the mechanisms behind trading, and also there is an agreement, so-called balancing responsible provider agreement, that an asset has with the party that is doing the trading. And this agreement, we need to understand what are the risks, what we want to achieve with this agreement, so that we define the terms and conditions the best way. Just as an example, so for some years ago, it was very common that imbalance cost was taken by the balancing responsible party. So it was not the asset owner that was paying the imbalance. It was a fixed fee that included the imbalance cost. Nowadays, the imbalance cost passes through to the owner. So it's not anymore the balancing responsible party that is covering it, but whatever imbalance it gets, and the cost, the asset owner pays it. So in most cases, I'm not saying that all the contracts are like this, but most of the contracts are nowadays like this. So this is also a change, or I will say a trend, that we also need to be aware of. And this requires that there is this, as you say, this collaboration between the asset owners and the traders to minimize imbalance, minimize forecast errors.
Yeah, so do you expect asset management to become more centralized, like portfolio level optimization, or remain site specific?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is always a meaning on looking at your portfolio based on the price areas where the assets are located, so that you are optimizing the operation of the wind farms in each area. So this is absolutely one way of doing it. It will also depend a lot on the size of your portfolio. If it is small portfolio, then there is not that much added value on doing it. Then also you might have different service agreements for the different wind farms. But if your portfolio is growing, then there is absolutely value on looking at it portfolio-wise, and also dividing into the price areas and trying to optimize in that way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really new to me. Thank you so much. Talking about more to the career aspect, so what skills or background do you think are currently underappreciated but increasingly important in asset management?
Yeah. So what kind of exactly skills are important when we are working with asset management? I don't really know if they are exactly, if they are not as important as others at the moment. But in my opinion, I will say, again, it's very important that an asset manager has a good understanding of the technology, but also a good asset management. A good asset manager is a person that can speak with many different people in different ways, that we really understand what are the reasons of this person. Is it a technical reason, or is it more financial perspective? Then you need to explain the situation in a different way. So it's a multidisciplinary field that also requires your way of working to be multidisciplinary, and trying to adapt. So it's dealing with technology and dealing with people and dealing with contracts from legal perspective, and you need to bring these three together and make it work.
Yeah, right. So no matter how much do you know, you also have to have the ability to communicate with the other and let the other know what do you mean, right?
Exactly. So this ability to communicate is very important. So even if you are very good at the technology or very good legally at the contracts, but then you need to bring this together and to communicate, if it is with the landowners or communicate with the service providers or communicate with the lenders, you need to do it in the most appropriate way. So the same message, but in many different ways. And again, having this collaborative approach, I think, is also very important to understand that we all have the same goal. It's just from different perspectives and different incentives, but that we are together, the lenders, the owners, and all the stakeholders involved, service providers, landowners, authorities. We have the same goal. It's just looking from different perspectives, but together making it work in the best way.
Yeah. So it's also about stakeholder management. So could you share with us about the biggest learning curve looking back at your career where you transition into the asset management?
Yeah. So I started then, as said, from the wind energy and analysis perspective modeling, so looking at data and looking at models, and then more and more getting in contact with the procurement process and also contract management and stakeholder management. So I will say that the learning curve has been this fact of understanding why people see things from different ways. So it's exactly the same problem, but people are looking at it from different ways and also expressing it in different ways. So the learning curve has been to how to deal with it.
Yeah. So I see that asset management is a very multidisciplinary, So what is your advice for students or freshers like us? Because we never have like a very multidisciplinary background to already ready for the asset management position. We either have like background, like technical background, engineering background, or business, legal background.
Yeah.
So what's your advice for us to be ready for if we want to direct our career path toward the asset management position?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first, I think that this wind power project management program is a very good program to give you this kind of multidisciplinary education, because here you will see these different parts in some way. So you will at least be aware that there are all these different perspectives. Then I think it's also very good if you are, for example, expert in legal questions or in technical questions, that you can begin with working with those parts. So being a technical asset manager or supporting the contractual management, but then also understanding, learning by collaborating with your colleagues about the other aspects. But also working with the entire asset management tasks, so with all the different tasks that are included in asset management, I would say that it requires that first you really like to have many different questions ongoing. So it's very dynamic work, and then also that you like to work with people at the same time that you like to work with technology and with contracts. So it's this combination, people, technology, contracts. Then I believe that if you enjoy it, you will enjoy this kind of work as asset manager.
Yeah. So one last question before we end our podcast about asset management in green industry today is that what do you think will fundamentally change in green asset management over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. It's a very good question, and of course always difficult to guess what will happen, but I can at least say what are the needs. What if I will go back 5 years, what I would have changed? And again, it's absolutely in terms of the contracts. So if we can add some more flexibility in the contracts for situations that are unexpected, that are unknown today, how to cover these cases in the future. Especially, of course, if you go for long-term contracts, then you are also fixing you inside this box. But what happens if it comes new things, ancillary services, or price-dependent curtailment, all these kind of things that are changing. Now we have a hybrid project, and you have this long-term agreement that lives for 20 years. How to make them match? So this is something that I think we need to work with in the future. So giving some flexibility, some agility to our contracts. I don't know how to do it, but it's something that really requires some more thinking behind it, especially if we go for long-term contracts. But in a market that needs to be agile and is developing very dynamic all the time.
Yeah. I also agree with you. Like when I was working at a law firm, we often have a job that drafting contract look like your tailor made all the clauses for your clients so that they can still fit to the clauses even where you gain weight or losing your weight in the future. So yes, it is. Thank you, Sonia. It is very interesting to talk with you today. We hope you all the best in the future and for the future, and also for all your wind power project and the hybrid projects in the future.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for being here, and good luck for all the students.
Thank you.
Thank you.